Welcome back. President Jacob Zuma preparing to deliver his State of the Nation address tomorrow. Big business and Cosatu calling for less talk, more action. Well, earlier on this morning, I had a chance to speak to the ANC Chief Whip, that's Dr. Matole Mocheka, who gave me, some viewers suggesting, a rather well-rehearsed idea of what's coming up tomorrow. We were hoping to speak to Patrick Craven at the same time. Mr. Craven now joining me, though, to speak on behalf of Cosatu. Patrick, always good having you in. Always a lot to talk about as far as the State of the Nation address. There's a lot to go through, of course, but just off the bat, what's the big thing that you really hope President Zuma addresses tomorrow?
Good morning. Clearly, the priority, as virtually always, will be the economy and jobs, and in particular to see how he interprets the ANC resolution on what they call the second phase of the transition, which is basically an attempt to try to grapple with this huge problem of unemployment, poverty and inequality. But in particular, we want to see what concrete steps he's taking. The big problem with State of the Nation addresses is that very often you agree with every word, but the next year you have to ask, well, what progress has been made?
Well, let's start there. What wasn't done in the last year that was spoken about in last year's State of the Nation address? What still needs to be done almost 12 months later?
Well, one answer I think was given in the unemployment figures which were given last week, which shows we really haven't cracked this problem. In fact, in the last quarter of last year, we actually lost jobs, which is unusual because that's the quarter where normally the economy does best. So clearly we haven't solved this problem, and we need much more urgent action on things like the Industrial Policy Action Plan, the Infrastructure Development Programme, which was announced in last year's State of the Nation address, to see real change on the ground.
The youth wage subsidy, this is an ongoing debate. How much focus do you think is going to be placed on that tomorrow as well? Because employment is one thing, but it's getting the youth into an employment position. But this wage subsidy criticism that it will be exploited.
We certainly hope that he will deal with the issue of youth unemployment
First, yes.
But that he will also reject the idea that there is one simple, simplistic solution called a youth wage subsidy. We're currently involved at NEDLAC with government and business in a package of measures to deal with the question of youth unemployment, and I'm assuming the President will refer to that. And we can't at this stage say exactly what those proposals are, but certainly we hope that they will be far better than this youth wage subsidy, which we believe was never a solution and was a way of avoiding the real, more complex and difficult issues around youth unemployment, particularly in the area of education. And that's something where, again, we'll be looking for something very concrete. We've got, again, lots of good plans on paper, but are we actually now starting to produce graduates with better skills, better qualifications?
Well, some might argue they're not all good plans. Teachers' unions saying the essential services idea being put forward to have education as essential service is not a great idea.
Well, it depends what they mean by it. There's some confusion now. If it means that teachers are not allowed to strike, which is what Cosatu is obviously worried about, then we agree with them. We're totally opposed to that. Simply saying that education is essential to society, of course, is non-controversial at all. No one would dispute that. Sure. But that mustn't be used as an excuse for limiting the constitutional rights of teachers.
I want to come back to employment, and this is where I was hoping to have you and the ANC on at the same time. Labour broking. Two words, the big elephant in the room that's always spoken about, but again it's being brought up as far as the State of the Nation address is concerned. Where does Cosatu stand on that? Are we making any progress in the difference of opinion between yourselves and the ANC?
We're making some progress, but in our view not enough. Again, NEDLAC is busy discussing these issues. The government has moved. They want to regulate labour broking much more tightly, but still allow it to exist for a 6-month period. And we would argue that's 6 months too much. The danger is that workers will still be exploited for 6 months and then thrown out of work again and another lot taken on for another 6 months. We see no reason for maintaining labour broking at all. We think that if you're working for a company, you should be employed by that company, and that employer should then have the sole responsibility for your working conditions, wages, and so on.
Patrick, so much you and I could talk about. There really is, of course, but we're just limited by time, of course, being that the major factor. You'll be watching it tomorrow. We'll be chatting to you again in the next few days. Always a pleasure. Patrick Craven, Cosatu national spokesperson, not like the ANC giving us a prepared speech, but we'll wait to see what comes out tomorrow. Patrick, thank you very much for the moment.